Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Hope you're doing really well. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. And if you are a regular around these earbuds, thank you very much for the continuous support. Let's look at the Sydney Roosters 2023 draw. Bro, for a team that is earmarked to be the favourites or one of the two favourites coming into this year, they have a really nice start to the year. Yeah, a blockbuster here or there, but they have a really nice first section to start off 2023. Before I continue though, must reiterate, the Sydney Roosters are going to be one of those sides that are heavily affected by the FIFA Women's World Cup that kicks off in July and finishes in approximately early September. Sydney Roosters will have to move, I think, to the Sydney Cricket Ground instead of playing at their brand new digs at Allianz Stadium. Anyways, let's start off with round number one, and it's a trip up to Queensland, specifically Suncorp Stadium, where they are going to be a part of history. The Redcliffe Dolphins, the home side, play their first ever game. Their first ever opponents will be the Sydney Roosters, Sunday, 9 o'clock. That is a massive win for the Sydney Roosters. And it is also going to be played for the Arthur Beetson Cup, because Arthur Beetson played for the Dolphins for many years, back in the 70s, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a blockbuster way for the Sydney Roosters to start. And then from round 2 until round 5, bro, the Sydney Roosters play 3 straight games, including a bye at home. And that's fair enough because they have to move across the road to the Sydney Cricket Ground. So let's look at what happens for them in round number 2. Saturday, 3 p.m. They host the New Zealand Warriors, who played their first ever game at the brand new stadium. And then 1 week later, a blockbuster Friday night primetime Channel 9 game. The old rivalry, the Book of Feuds, reignited one more time. The Sydney Roosters versus the South Sydney Rabbitohs, Channel 9 game. And then they have a bye in round number 4, followed by a Thursday night contest against the Parramatta Eels at Allianz Stadium. Yes, South Sydney are in there. Yes, the Parramatta Eels are also in there too. And look, with all due respect to the Dolphins and the Warriors, you'd probably look at those 2 games and say, Roosters, Roosters. But man, what a really smooth way for them to start this season. There's a real fair dinkum possibility that they could go 4-0 after 5 rounds. Now, section 2 is where things start to get tricky for the Sydney Roosters. Starting with round number 6, it is an Easter game. I think it's an Easter game. The Melbourne Storm host the Sydney Roosters on a Thursday night primetime game. And this is the start of 2 back-to-back away games. So they go down to Victoria, then they're away at PointsBet Stadium to the Cronulla Sharks, Friday, 6 p.m. Not a free-to-air game, which is surprising, considering the projections of both of these clubs. But Sydney Roosters took on the Cronulla Sharks last year, and while there was a bit of a defensive lapse toward the end of the contest, they really had the Cronulla Sharks number. But section 2 of their season starts with back-to-back away games in Melbourne and Cronulla. Then they're back at their home digs at Allianz Stadium for the traditional annual Anzac Day game against the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and that's the first time ever that Anzac Day match will take place at Allianz Stadium. So that is going to be a very special day indeed. Moving into round number 9 now, the Warriors host the Roosters at Mount Smart Stadium, Sunday, 2 o'clock. And that's only, I think, 4 or 5 weeks in between drinks. for the Warriors and Roosters. So they get each other done very early on in 2023. And to finish up section 2 of their season is a game against the North Queensland Cowboys, Sunday Channel 9 game. If it's not the Melbourne Storm versus South Sydney Rabbitohs, I think this is going to be the game of Magic Round. Fingers crossed that the Cowboys stay true to their form from last season. So to put in a nutshell for the Sydney Roosters for section 2, very tricky, much harder this time around. Back-to-back away games against the Storm and the Sharks. They host St. George Illawarra Dragons on Anzac Day. We saw what the Dragons did last season. Then they are away at Mount Smart Stadium, a trip to New Zealand against the Warriors. And then they're the home team at Suncorp Stadium to play the North Queensland Cowboys. That is much trickier. And their next opposition, they play twice in the space of section 3. It doesn't come any harder than a trip to the foot of the Blue Mountains. The Penrith Panthers host the Sydney Roosters, Friday Channel 9 game, and this is going to be the first home game in a month for the Penrith Panthers, so they are going to be right royally up for this one against the Eastern Suburbs. Then 1 week later, they're back at it against Anzac Day opponents, the St. George Illawarra Dragons. And this is going to be the weekend where Origin stars are not going to be rested. They're going to be proving themselves that they are going to be selected, or they should be selected for State of Origin. They travel just down the road to Netstrata Jubilee Stadium, and that is for a Friday 6 p.m. game. Then they do have the bye when Origin stars are taken out of club footy. Round number 14, they have a home game, but it's not at Allianz Stadium. It's at what is the Industry Group Stadium, Central Coast Stadium in Gosford, Sunday 2 p.m. against the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, 1 week after their second bye of 2023. And to wrap up section 3 of their season is a home game against the Penrith Panthers, Saturday 7:30 p.m. At Allianz Stadium. So again, you have the Penrith Panthers bookending section 3 of their season. And in between that, they do have a game against the Dragons. You'd probably say tick. They have a game against the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Will be tricky. The Bulldogs did beat them last year as well, but you'd probably give the tick to the Sydney Roosters. And if they can win one of those 2 games against the Penrith Panthers, that's going to build a lot of confidence for all fans of the Roosters and a whole lot of fear for absolutely everybody else. Section 4 starts with a trip to the Hunter Valley, where the Newcastle Knights host the Sydney Roosters, Saturday 3 p.m. 1 week later, for a Sunday twilight game, the Roosters host the Canberra Raiders at Allianz Stadium, round number 17. Moving into round number 18, it's a trip to Four Pines Park, where they take on the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles there on a Sunday afternoon Channel 9 contest. Then they have their third and final bye for 2023. And then the final game of section 4 for the Sydney Roosters is a home game at the Sydney Cricket Ground, because the FIFA Women's World Cup would have been kicked off by that stage. And that is going to be up against the Melbourne Storm, Thursday night football. That is a very navigatable couple of weeks or month for the Sydney Roosters for sure. I think they can win all of those games, and they'll also cop the 2 points from the bye as well. So that's going to be successful. But again, while James Tedesco, Angus Crichton, potentially Joseph Suaalii will be probably rested for a couple of games because of State of Origin, you've still got the likes of Jaguar Hargreaves, you've still got Brandon Smith and Luke Keary in there as well, leading the ship quite nicely. So that's not too bad of a section there for the Sydney Roosters. So if the Eastern Suburbs are sitting inside the top 4, just outside the 8, like they were last year, what does their run to the finals look like? So from round 21 through till round 27, they don't have any more buys, and their run to the finals starts with back-to-back Queensland games. Round 21 is an away game against the Gold Coast Titans, Saturday 3 p.m. And Titans have been known to give them quite a fair bit of curry over the past decade or so, or at least in my opinion anyway. And then down at the Gabba they go, or up to the Gabba they go actually, to take on the Brisbane Broncos Thursday night football. So that's the Titans and the Broncos back-to-back away Queensland games. Then they're back at home at the Sydney Cricket Ground to take on the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, and straight off the top of the dome, the Manly Sea Eagles, they have a dreadful record. It's more of a barren record more than anything, but they don't have a very nice record against the Sydney Roosters. And that one's taking place Thursday night. Then they back it up again with a home game, and it's the big return to Allianz for the second time around. I wonder what the media is going to start doing there. And they're going to be hosting the Redcliffe Dolphins at Allianz Stadium. So Arthur Beetson Cup match Mark II, and that's going to be Saturday 7:30 p.m. and it's going to be a part of Channel 9's free-to-air coverage on Saturday nights that starts from, I think, around 21 or 22 until finals all kicks off as well. Then shifting over to round number 25, there's only 3 more rounds left. They play the Parramatta Eels at CommBank Stadium Friday night, 8 p.m. That's going to be a massive contest. Round number 26, they technically have their last home game of the year, where they host the West Tigers Saturday 5:30 p.m. at Allianz Stadium. Oh man, if it's anything like, and it won't be, but if it's anything like last year where they won, what, 72 points to 6? Oh man, strike me pink. And then the final round, of course it would end like this. They are away to the South Sydney Rapidos at Accor Stadium, Friday night Channel 9 game. Absolute beauty. So to really put in a nutshell and to wrap things up for their run to the finals, back-to-back away games, Titans, Broncos, then back-to-back home games against Manly and the Dolphins. Then they've got Eels away, Tigers at home, and Souths away. Look, even if they were a team that were projected to be 7th or 6th, a lot of people have them well entrenched inside the top 4 in 2023. That's still a very, very favourable draw. That's a very favourable draw, not anywhere near the likes of the Brisbane Broncos run home or the other teams that I've looked at as well. And overall, man, it's not too bad of a draw. Yes, they take on the Panthers and the Storm, the Rabbits twice, for sure, I get that. But they are projected to be a top 4 side. And that run to the finals, they've got Tigers, Dolphins, Manly Sea Eagles. I would put Brisbane Broncos and the Gold Coast Titans in that mix for being potentially easy, penciled in victories, bro. So nowhere near. It is absolutely nowhere near the toughest draw. I don't think it's the easiest draw, but it's right down there, bro. The Sydney Roosters 2023 draw is rather favourable indeed. What's your opinion on the Sydney Roosters draw? Hope you guys can like, share and subscribe to the content, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Adios.